and good morning, and welcome to another episode of Money Matters. I am your host, Nev, and today is Tuesday. So I've been off for a few days. A lot of things have happened, and not much has happened. COVID is still here, vaccines have been approved and started rolling out, but most of us haven't received them and won't for a little while. But there's a little bit of excitement in the air about the whole thing. Meanwhile, there's many bad things that are also happening as we speak it. And one of the bad things that is happening, well, is that we are having some not so positive news. For example, there is news that some of the large institutions might be leaving the Big Apple, the giant, big old beautiful New York City for Florida. We are seeing that the tech is leaving Silicon Valley and they all seem to be going into Texas. So we're seeing definitely some shifts in desires, in beliefs, in what people want to do, and a lot of it has to do with taxation and the fact that they don't want to deal with it. But of course, today we're going to be looking at some of the exciting news on the other side of the pond, which has to do with crypto. So we're going to be taking a look at some of the very exciting and positive news that have been happening. That if you read through the tea leaves, if you would, if you look at the coffee grounds, if you want to take it differently, well, in that case, you can see where the bright future truly is coming for us here in the crypto space. And you might be taking action and trying to actually convince others to take action as well. And I will share with you my story of what I was attempting to do. I failed. I'm going to put it out there here. Spoiler alert. I failed miserably in the whole thing. But I will explain exactly what I was trying to do in order to convince people to get into crypto. So that's going to be my interesting story. Anyways, I do want to welcome everybody who is watching this live. Hey, if you're brand new, smash the subscribe button and the notification button. And of course, make sure you hit all. You get notified every morning we go live, which is just about every morning. On occasion, I do go away, like I just went away. And, but then I'm back and we go right back into it and we talk about stuff and we talk about how do you not just protect your wealth, but also potentially grow it over time. So that's kind of what we're going to do. I do also want to welcome everybody who is watching a replay or listening this to one of the podcasting services. Welcome as well. Super excited to have you here. And let's do this. All right, y'all. So, good morning. Happy Tuesday to you. So, before we get into the markets or anything like that, I told you I was going to tell you a story of how I'm so excited, I'm so bullish about this whole crypto space that I was attempting to convince my friends and family to get into it, right? And so, with holidays coming around, people are like, ooh, I'm going to get you a gift. I'm like, okay, cool. I don't really need anything. I don't want anything. And then I came up with this scheme. Let's call it a scheme because that's kind of what it sounds like. And so I said, you're going to do what you're going to do anyways. You're going to spend money on this gift. How about, do you want to play a game even though I told you I don't really need anything? I said, all right, I'll, hear you out. I said, okay, cool. So I'm like, how about whatever amount of money you were going to spend to buy me whatever gift you were going to buy me, you go in and actually buy Bitcoin. And then a year later from now, if I am wrong and Bitcoin goes to zero, you lose nothing because you were going to spend this money anyways. And I don't really care if I get a gift or not. The fact that you're going to actually buy Bitcoin is a gift enough. That's super exciting for me. And, but I'm like, if I'm right, then you're going to be able to take just a small portion of the proceeds to still buy me a gift a year from now and be left with a healthy sum of money anyways, comparatively speaking, of course. So anyways, the people are like, yeah, no, I don't have time. I don't want to do it. And I'm like, oh man, I just wish that more people would take care of their wealth and their money now when we actually have a beautiful chance to be able to do that. because time is ticking. The clock is ticking. We're not going to be sitting at 19,000, low 19,000, high $18,000 Bitcoin for forever. This puppy is going to go into the tens of thousands, into the five, and well, it's currently at 5 digits, but it's going to go to the six digits in a short order for sure. And that's the time of people are going to actually start calling and asking, how do I do this, right? Now I am begging them to do the right thing. When it's too late, they're going to be begging me to do the right thing, but it's going to be too late. Well, it's not going to be too late. I don't think it's ever going to be too late. It's just not as profitable, right? Not as profitable. And so I guess I'm trying to do the same thing for them that I didn't do for myself back when I first heard about this damn thing. And it was just too hard for me to try to figure out. And maybe, then and I'll be very honest, I didn't try very hard anyways. So, anyways, let's go into the markets and talk some smart, intelligent stuff. So, let's see what's going on here in the market. Let's refresh this, get a fresh batch of what's happening in the market. So Bitcoin right now is sitting pretty at $19,307.42, up just slightly over 1% over the last 24 hours. So it's been a pretty boring, so to speak, last few days in the price of Bitcoin and everything else. We had, the down market, the up market. It's slightly moved up, it's slightly moved down, but mostly it's been sideways. And it's been happening that way, of course, for Bitcoin, for Ethereum, for altcoins. The biggest gainers and losers in most cases end up being like stable coins, which is ridiculous, right? And they're like the stable ones. So that's kind of how boring the market has been. Now, of course, even though I'm saying it has been a boring market, there have been times where some of the coins have done incredibly well, some have not. People have made money, people have lost money. But overall speaking, overall big picture speaking, over the last 5, 6, 7 days, something like that, that we've been looking, not much has happened. With the exception of one coin that I'm going to go into in a moment. ETH is in a number 2 spot. Of course, it is again also slightly up for 24 hours, over 1%. Currently trading at $586.36. XRP is the one that took a giant dump, and it's currently at 48 cents, 48.38 cents. Let's be accurate over here. And that's the one that actually is a bit down over the last 24 hours, about 2.5%, 20.5% dump in 7 days. And why? Well, there's a couple of reasons, and the reason that I don't actually particularly like XRP. This is my humble opinion. You create your own and do your own research. But the reason I don't like it is because while XRP is being pumped by a big giant corporation, there's really no benefits to the XRP holder other than hope and pray that the price is going to go up. And the unfortunate piece is that I think that the owners of the token, the company, right, is basically using it to fund its operations and then reward the users that are in its privately held stock. So the coin individuals don't get much. They truly are just, well, lamb to be slaughtered. So they came up with the scheme of like, right, because XRP hasn't been moving much. I mean, it's been sitting between 20 and 25 cents for, I don't know, for forever. And it hasn't been moving. And I feel like they might have also come up with a scheme, a better one than I came up with, of convincing my friends of, how they should buy crypto as opposed to buying me gifts for holidays. And they came up with this whole, well, we're going to receive an airdrop. And of course, people get a little bit excited about airdrops. Who wouldn't? So everybody kind of piled in. When everybody piles in, the price actually goes up. And what did we see? We saw one leader from the company after another, one whale after another, mostly very insiders, let's call it that way, that were going in and selling ginormous amounts of XRP into the market because the prices were going up and they were making ridiculous profit. So when they did that, the market still held the bag. They were still excited. They were like, ooh, we're going to get this airdrop. Everybody held on. And of course, the airdrop was kind of coming in. Some are getting it, some are not. Next thing you know is, boom. You pull it out, and of course, the last person is left with the holding of the bag, and the bag is looking ugly. So that's one of the reasons that I don't necessarily care much about this puppy. But that's just me. You do you. Over the last 24 hours, we did have some really exciting gainers. Like I said, we do get some of that stuff, and we're seeing that some of the altcoins are actually doing that. CHSB, uh, Swissport, right, is up 20.4% in 24-hour period. It's trading quite nicely. SushiSwap is up 16.8% 24 hours. Synthetics is up 16.8%. Kusama 12%. Ocean 11.3. EGLD is 11.3 as well. Aave 9.7. So you do have some really nice movers. On the losing end, we also have some of that stuff as well. We have Vitae down 17.5. That's the biggest loser. After that, we have STX at negative 7.3. Want at negative 5. Ampleforth at negative 3.4. And so not a whole lot on the losing end, but quite a bit on the gaining side of the whole thing. This is really, really exciting news and really exciting stuff. All right, so let's take a look at some big picture stuff. What's been happening around the world and how are people making money? And for that, we're actually going to go to Eastern Europe. So we're going back home, y'all. I haven't been since 2018. No, 2019. Sorry, that's a lie. I was slated to go into 2020. Clearly, we all see how 2020 ended or is ending, right? So nobody went anywhere. I at least didn't. Influential Ukrainian oligarch mines Bitcoin at his factory. So this gentleman right over here has basically a factory that has been shut down, and they can't do much of anything else. So what he did is he decided that, hey, while we can't work the folks and we have this factory, what we're going to do is we're actually going to take in this, energy and everything else, and we're just going to mine Bitcoin. So they set up a mining rig in its factory in Kentucky, and decided that, hey, we're going to, because we can't get the folks, we do have this thing, the energy is low, we're just going to go in and mine Bitcoin. And so that's basically what's happening in this one Kentucky factory. Nothing else but a Bitcoin mining rig in order for them to diversify their income. Pretty ingenious, if you ask me. Now, of course, China has successfully completed its own transition to yet another digital trial of the digital yuan. As you know, they did use another town, gave out another swat of money with the red envelopes, and it was a huge success. They are saying that they are going to be continuing to test this thing into 2021. They're going to be rolling out, every time they roll it out, they learn more about the behavior, about the usage, about who does what, how do people like it, how they don't like it, what they use it, what they don't use it, and they end up tweaking it, and they end up slowly but surely rolling it out. So it sounds like, based off of what I could gather from this particular article, is that right at the moment they're not necessarily like saying like we are going live 100% in January 1st 2021. They're not doing such a thing. They're still going to be continuing to test it, but every test gives them additional information that they didn't have before, and of course gets people to be a bit more comfortable utilizing what they have. Now, of course, in China, that makes it much easier than any other place out there, and mostly because, well, they have been using digital yuan, so to speak. It wasn't the central bank digital currency, but it was a digital version of the paper fiat yuan that they were already using it with their phones anyways, scanning everything, and that was kind of how they were transacting. And so now what I have heard that they're also doing is creating sort of the proximity thing, where you can basically just touch each other's phones to be able to transfer money. So no more having to type anything, no more having to scan the address. If I just want to give you money, I just basically, tap your phone with my phone, and that's that. We do have some smart rings as well that, you can actually pass on information. If you can pass on information, well, you can pass on crypto as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see that as well. I actually did have an idea, so here I'm going to give it to you. It's $1 trillion idea right over there to create crypto wallets as part of the Ring hardware. I don't have time, energy. I'm in so many other things. So there you go. That's a gift for you from me, just for being here and watching and listening the show. So France is introducing a tougher KYC regulation for cryptocurrency transactions. So when we switch over from Eastern Europe to China, and then we basically fly back over to the Western Europe, we're noticing that France is doing something a bit different. They are petrified in Europe, absolutely petrified of the predominantly stable coins, and they want to regulate them as much as they possibly can. So one of the things that they're doing is saying in France of like, I don't care, every transaction needs to be, we need to know about it. So if you give money take it from the exchange and give it to your best friend, or give it yourself, or you purchase something, or mom sends you, pocket change or whatever, we all want to know that. So they are freaking out and want to track everything. Now, one of the things that is nice about what they're doing is they're actually coming up with some regulation and guidance, unlike some other places in the world. What is really bad about the whole thing is that they are, in many ways, prohibiting continuation of the growth and development of this incredibly important industry. And so when you ban it in one place, that means that everybody who wants to develop it and work on it is just going to move somewhere where they're treated nicely. So when you do that, you kind of have this Atlas shrugged moment where, right, like every productive member of society kind of escapes to this like place where they can be productive, treated well, and continue to develop and grow and do what they do. And everybody who just basically wants a handout stays in this location. That's, you kind of start having these like really weird economies of the place and the space. And so that's kind of where I'm seeing things happening. I think regulation is incredibly important, but doing it in a healthy way. So this is one of the things that is kind of interesting with France. And of course, there's additional problems that are happening with the whole France. It has to do with Brexit, and is the canal back to the Britain, or is it can the French use it as well? Do they have to pay for it? Can the French fish there? Like there's so many problems, and it's like, oh, the banking stuff. What are we going to do with that? How are we going to support Spain and Italy, but whole like bailout? Are we doing that? And we're not. Oh wait, what happened with Greece? So there's all these problems that are happening, and then interesting enough, since I've spoken of Italy and Italian banks are actually starting to put their funding into the emerging crypto companies. Believe it or not, they're actually starting to be investors in startups in their own local crypto companies to develop stuff, because they figured, look, this is the future. There's no escaping it, and it's time to jump in. And they're not the only ones. There are many other ones that are jumping in. We have Israel is incredibly bullish on technology as a whole. They have been investing in AI and now blockchain technology for forever. There's many VC companies that are investing heavily into the projects over there. Of course, we're seeing some stuff happening in some of the other places that are also allowing for the things. We'll see how it all rolls out. Some of the other countries and places are making it impossible for themselves. And this is the part where I call it shooting yourself in your dancing foot, or you maybe if it could be a driving foot, right? Like if you drive stick, then you have two driving feet, but if you drive automatic, you have like one driving foot that switches between the gas and the brake, right? And shooting yourself into it forces you to have to drive with the other foot, or have somebody drive you around, which could potentially be a very scary experience depending on which situation you choose and who the driver is. Now, one of the huge news that is important to cover right now before we go into some incredibly bullish news for crypto and Bitcoin, but crypto as a whole, has to do with the fact that the U.S. government has been hacked. The latest U.S. Treasury hack will further increase people's trust in Bitcoin, potentially. But what has happened is that the U.S. Treasury and the state agencies and the government agencies have been hacked, and this is coming from the solar wind. Now, we did cover here on the channel that we did have, I think it's called the SpyEye or iSpy or something like that. That is a crypto security company. They got hacked, and they were saying it looked like a state-related hack, right? It was super big, super intelligent, kind of how it happened. Then what has happened is that the SolarWinds from Austin rolled out the update. It sounds like they had some, malicious hardware put in their update. When they pushed it out for everybody to update, basically this malware went in, allowed the hackers to go in, and they were able to access many things. Now, we don't know exactly what they were able to take and steal. In this case, in reading many different articles and talking to many different people, it doesn't sound like one of the things that we should be worried about are things like, social security cards and credit cards, although you should have some sort of monitoring in place to tell you about those things when those things happen and protect you. I think that's a very smart idea in this day and age. But it sounds like it's something much bigger of what they're fishing within it, and it might have to do sort of country versus country. This is a very dangerous piece, and I know that right now we looked at this article over here that's saying, oh, well, this treasury hack will further increase people's trust in Bitcoin, potentially, but I think that there is a bigger thing at play here that is much more political in nature, not just necessarily financial. And as you know, the politics and finance are in many ways connected, always have been, always will be, to a degree, right? But the interesting piece that I think might be is in going into the investigation of what this means. Now, the part that makes it really weird is that the SolarWinds is they're being used for many corporations. They're being used about every branch of the government, and that is sort of like a shame on you on the government's part. You are relying on one particular individual to protect everything, or one particular company, right? Had they diversified into a few different providers, it would have affected one thing but not everything else. I don't know that we just don't have maybe enough of those things. I don't know if maybe things are not like necessarily work that way in the technology world, but it does really drive a point of the importance of diversification of your insurance, of your security, of your income, of your portfolio, of your everything. And so it's just a huge educational moment, in my personal and humble opinion, of what we should be paying attention to. Of course, you know that the Ethereum 2.0 has launched, and it's smooth. There's nothing happening in it. It's pretty boring, and pretty boring is what we want to see when it comes to the whole thing. Now, the Beacon chain is officially running. Major exchanges such as Coinbase, Binance, and Kraken are providing the service for those that do not want to run their own hardware. This is very cool and very interesting, and so you can go in and be this validator provider into the thing, make some passive cash flow from Ethereum 2.0, but without running your own hardware. Of course, people who want to run their own hardware, they can. There are many videos out there that teaches you kind of how to do this stuff. You can, of course, read the documentation and be able to run it. A couple of things to pay attention to is that there are penalties for misbehavior, and they're very harsh. And they already have had some slashing incidents, which label the biggest dramas. And slashing is the defense mechanism that has been designed to protect the network by punishing the validators if they do not fulfill their task correctly. So you want to make sure that you're doing it and doing it correctly, and it's going to make it expensive to attack the network, and secondly, prevent validators from underperforming or acting maliciously. So you can do that piece, or you can basically just use a third party to do the validation for you. They likely won't give you all of the proceeds. I'm going to bet it. From the business side of the whole spectrum, they're going to use their own validator nodes or create them on your behalf, and then they will keep a portion of the proceeds that goes to you. You get to keep the portion of the proceeds, so you don't get the full thing, but you still benefit because, well, you don't have to run your own node, and you don't have to necessarily worry about whether you're going to be validating anything or not. Now, here is the news of the week. I believe it's the news of the week. Of course, we did talk about Michael Saylor, and borrowing of the money, through the bond, and I said he's going to be either the most brilliant man in the history has known when it comes to business, or a complete idiot by pulling this move. I think he's going to be most brilliant man in the world because he's borrowing at basically 0% interest. Uh, and buying something that has ability to return 10 to 15x on the short term, to 100, maybe even 1000x on the long term spectrum of the whole thing. Now, we've also received news of something else, and that is Mass Mutual has actually gone into the Bitcoin purchase. They purchased $100 million worth of Bitcoin. And this is huge news because Mass Mutual, if you don't know anything about it, is an insurance provider as well as retirement provider. So you have to be, they are incredibly controversial. They're not controversial. They're conservative. They're very, very conservative. So maybe this is controversial piece of what they're doing, but they're incredibly conservative as a company. They have a lot of regulations that they have to deal with, specifically because they are insurance, because they are in pension, because they're dealing with this very specific amounts of money, and they need to make sure that they support folks when the support is needed. So in order to do that, they tend to invest, and the typically insurance companies tend to be like 100 some years old. This is the case of Mass Mutual. They are well over 100 years old, and have survived many different downfalls, including the big depression, slightly smaller than the one that we're in right now. And so they have to invest in some very, very, secure things. Typically, they go into the treasuries, they might go into real estate, they go into the things that are typically very safe. So the fact that they are looking at right now and saying, well, we still have that stuff, we need to diversify, we're looking at the bonds, we're looking at everything else, it's not giving us as much of a yield, we have to give a yield. And because they're a mutual company, that means that they're not necessarily like, they're for profit, so to speak, but it kind of goes to all of the members, right? It goes to all of the members, and all of the members get a portion of the profits that they go in, and everybody kind of benefits. That's sort of the beautiful part of the whole thing. So the fact that they're going into Bitcoin lets me know a few things. They have likely looked at all of the other things and said, that we're not getting as much yield. Number two, that they're looking at and saying, well, everything else seems just as risky. This is not as risky piece. And it really sends a message of how safe and stable Bitcoin has a potential to be. Now, of course, it is still very volatile right now. But if you stop for a moment and pay attention to who and how many individuals and companies have started to put their money into something like Bitcoin, then it becomes a reality of what's going on and what is happening. And that is that more and more companies are going to be doing this stuff. And of course, 100 million for Mass Mutual is, drop in a bucket. That's fine. But if you have the largest pension funds and the largest insurance funds start going in and putting only 1% of their money, we're talking trillions of dollars entering Bitcoin and crypto space. And of course, as we all know, I think everybody has done this. When you go into the crypto space, you typically start with Bitcoin, right? And you go in and you buy some Bitcoin, and then you're like, oh man, maybe I should diversify within this space. So you look at the place and you're like, Ethereum is doing some really cool things. I should probably get a portion of it, right? And then you look at some of the altcoins, and then you support some of that stuff. So you kind of like start going, sort of forking out. Let's just call it that. Let's use the crypto word for what you're doing. And I think the same will happen with the institutions. They probably will hold the lion's share in Bitcoin within crypto. Then, of course, the second lion's share, or lioness share, maybe the cub share, is going to be in Ethereum, and then a much smaller portion is going to go into the different alts. But I think that we're going to see that. We're seeing that with the Grayscale. We've seen that with Raul Paul, when he talked about that stuff, and Real Vision. Michael Saylor is very bullish on the Bitcoin as a whole, but he's also saying, well, maybe we can talk about. So he's turning into a Bitcoin maximalist. Again, I don't know that the space needs to fight. I think there's room at the table for everybody, and everybody is bringing something incredibly important to the space. But of course, the interesting piece is that once they do this, this is that part of the tsunami wave that I've been talking about, that it is coming for the Bitcoin, which is going to raise the price. And of course, JP Morgan agrees with me. Hey, JP Morgan and I don't always see eye to eye, but this is one thing we actually do agree on. So, of course, JP Morgan strategies, including Nikolaos Panigisoglou, reportedly suggested that Bitcoin adoption is now expanding from family offices and wealthy investors to bigger investors like insurance firms and pension funds. Insurance firms and pension funds are unlikely to invest large amounts of Bitcoin. However, even the small amount, like I said, 1% is a huge amount of money. All right? If pension funds and insurance companies in United States, Euro area, and United Kingdom and Japan, right? So just four largest areas of the world, financially speaking, allocate just 1% of their assets to Bitcoin, Bitcoin demand would grow by an additional $600 billion. And this basically would almost double Bitcoin market capitalization. So just 1% of these companies, right, would come in, and they basically say, you know what, we're going to come in, we're going to put a very, very small amount of money. This doesn't account for any other corporations. This doesn't account for the retail coming in. This doesn't account for banks coming in. This doesn't account for anything else. This is literally just insurance and pension. Insurance and pension. That's it. They go in, they put just 1% of it. It doubles the market cap. Now, how is it going to double? Well, the price actually has to go up, and it has to go up basically 2x, right? It has to go up, it has to double. And of course, when that happens, it's probably going to not just double, it's actually going to become so bullish that it actually might go more than just a double. This is an incredible move, and this is something that we could expect to see happen. And you could wake up one day and all of a sudden, right, like we're like flirting with like $22,000 for Bitcoin, and you go to sleep and you wake up the next day and there's this giant green candlestick, and we just gapped over to like 50. That would not be unheard of, especially not in bull markets, and something that could very much happen. So of course, when that happens, you were like, oh man, I should have bought at 19. Yeah, you should have bought at 19, but hey, who pays attention to that? One can see the potential demand that could arise over the coming years as other insurance companies and pension funds follow Mass Mutual example. And you know what? Mass Mutual going in and doing this stuff, the clock started ticking. The clock started ticking. The game is afoot, as they say. And of course, more and more companies are going to go in. They're not going to announce it right now until they've actually done it. As more companies announce it, more companies will want to go into it. Then next thing what's going to happen is you're going to have a small country that's going to say, well, shucks, we've looked at everything. It's working for this people. It's working for these people. It's working for the companies. We're about to say the size of Apple or smaller or Amazon, whatever. We might as well do the same thing. Next thing you know, they're going to go and become on the Bitcoin standard, not to quote the book, but to quote the book. And then next thing you know is that's when the prices are going to go through the roof. I was just listening while I was away. I had an opportunity to drive for many of hours, which means listening to many of podcasts. So I love doing these drives because I end up being like super smart at the end of the whole thing, right? Imagine you just have like time to learn. That's it. That's all you're doing. You're just learning and learning and learning, and it's amazing. I love it. So, anyways, I was listening to one of the podcasts, and I can't remember exactly which one it was. It might have been Swan, maybe. I don't know. My apologies if I don't recall. But anyways, Max Kaiser decided to join in, and he said something really brilliant. I really enjoy the guy most of the time. Sometimes he does some silly stuff. I'm like, really? Like, is there a need for that? But to each their own. We all express ourselves differently, right? And he said something absolutely brilliant, and basically said, look, treat Bitcoin right now at the price of this, 18,000 something, 19,000 something. So let's call it 18, $19,000 level, treated as a $2 Bitcoin. Like, that's kind of where we are right now in the state of game. Of course, the numbers are a little bit different, but play pretend that we are at the $2 level, knowing what you know right now, knowing where we are right now at that flirting with the 20,000, right? So that's, if you think about it, that's 10, 10,000, right? 10,000x, 10,000x. So that's kind of what you have to think about when it comes to Bitcoin. If you think in those terms, then 19,000 is nothing, right? But the interesting piece is that in 2007, 17, not 7, sorry, 17, when Bitcoin was at this stage, and it was right around this time of the year and stuff as well, right? Uh, Everybody under the sun was Googling how to, and I'm specifically saying Googling, how to actually get into Bitcoin. Everybody wanted to know how to buy it. Everybody wanted to know what it is. If you mentioned the word crypto or Bitcoin, everybody was running your way and wanting to participate in it and wanting to know. I mean, you would get trampled over at conferences. Now, as I have shared with you at the beginning of this episode, I am going out there and literally convincing people to not buy me a gift for holidays. What am I, crazy? But to actually go in and put money into crypto. And the reason I'm doing that is because I know that if they will listen to me, I'll probably get a way bigger gift next year. No, 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 no. That's not why I'm doing it. Okay, maybe. I don't know. We'll discuss later in private. But literally, the reason I'm doing that is because it's, if you can put just a small amount, it takes 10, 15 minutes. Like, I'll guide you through it. It could have massive difference. And I'm saying use the money you would have bought me gift with anyways. So that money is leaving you anyways. You lose absolutely nothing. And I still can't convince people to take 10 minutes of their time to do it. But again, when it does 10x or 100x or 1000x or even 10,000x, as Max Kaiser was basically sharing, then people will want to do it. And they will go and beat themselves up for not doing it. Just like I kind of go and beat myself up for not having enough time to go and figure out and learn how to get into Bitcoin in 2009 and 10 when I first heard about it. And of course, I was doing my own thing. I was investing in some other stuff, and life moved on, and that's fine. But I keep going back and going, man, I should have just taken a few more minutes of my time instead of saying this is too hard. Saying, you know what, your future self will thank you. Just spend a few more minutes. So spend a few more minutes. Don't let your future self basically beat you over and saying, should have bought that 19,000, right? Just like some of us are saying, should have bought at 1,000, should have bought at 100, should have bought at $1, should have bought at a penny. But I didn't do any of that stuff. I didn't start buying until we were in thousands. So still not too late to go and do it. And I do believe, again, not a financial advice. Nothing I say is or should be used as such, but it's just one of those things that just kind of makes sense if and when you think about it. So there you go. I hope you have enjoyed today's episode and the show. Do me a huge favor. If you like this, do smash the like button if there's such a thing. If there's a review service, hey, do me a huge favor and put in a smash and review. It does actually help quite a bit. Do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If there's notifications, do hit them. And I will see you tomorrow. Until then, stay forever money blessed. And do remember, you are only one deal away.